Hey guys, in today's video, I'll walk you through how recruiters and staffing agencies should use clay.com in 2025 and beyond. And if you're new to this channel, my name is Tim. I have the best, aka the only Clay course that teaches recruiters and staffing agencies how to use Clay both for client finding and candidate sourcing. I've taught over 150 people Clay in the last 2 months alone. And more than that, I've got a verified Clay agency. I'm a Clay expert. And hence, I would say I'm a reasonably good person to listen to when it comes to implementing and building these systems specifically for staffing agencies and recruitment clients. So if that sounds good, just give me the next 15 minutes or so, and I'll walk you through all the use cases and everything that you need to know before considering whether to use Clay or not to use Clay for your staffing or recruitment business. So let's get into it. So the first place where most people misunderstand Clay is that they don't understand where it fits compared to all the other sales tools out there. So it's very important to understand this. And essentially Clay is the bridge between the input and the output. Now, what do I mean by that? The input typically is data that you get from email finders, from LinkedIn Recruiter, maybe from your CRM or ATS, maybe from a CSV file, or it could be you scraping job data or receiving data from webhooks or APIs. So all of these are just methods of receiving data. And it's super important for you to have an input in order for you to then finally put it inside of Clay. And here is what Clay can basically do for you. So you can import companies into Clay, and also the same thing with people. You can then qualify them to see if they fit your ideal client profile. You can research the intent signals and buying triggers, and then personalize email copy and generate fully personalized emails from that. And essentially, after you do all of this fun stuff inside of Clay, you then need to push it to the output. And this could be to send it back to your ATS, to automate emails, LinkedIn, or any of the other fancy stuff that you can see on the right-hand side over here. So essentially, where most people get wrong, what most people misunderstand about Clay is they think Clay is just a magic solution, the single one thing that's going to fix your staffing agency. 99% of the time, it's not true. And what you need to prepare for, if you are to implement Clay, you will at the very least be spending $600 every month on sales tools, whether it's the tools for the input, for the output, or for Clay itself. So without further ado, now that we got the basics out of the way, let's talk about the main Clay use cases for recruiters. And in my opinion, there are 7 main use cases that I've stumbled across, having worked on over 50 different workflows recently. And specifically, the most mainstream one is reacting to open roles. So as soon as a new role is posted, you will automatically send a personalized email to the hiring stakeholders of the company, right? Same again for backfilling roles. We can identify people who are new in their role and reach out to whatever company they used to work for, trying to backfill the role. Very similarly here, once again, we can find open roles on company career pages, and then we can react by, emailing or LinkedIn messaging the hiring stakeholders. On top of that, there are a couple of other funky workflows that we can do. So for example, we can match any talents, so any most placeable candidates that are in your ATS or in your CRM right now. We can basically map them to open role opportunities that match their skill set right now on any job board out there. Now, I don't want to get too repetitive and too boring here, but there are a couple of other workflows that we can do. So we can find open roles from a company hit list. So you can upload a huge list of companies that are part of your total addressable market, or maybe your dream top 20 companies that you want to work with. You can track open roles from those companies, and then you can reach out to them when those roles are listed. On top of that, you can track market movers, so any people that left companies, so that you can reintroduce your services to them in their new company, or you can get notified instantly as soon as someone changes jobs. So essentially, this is a high-level summary, and of course, there are a lot of cool other candidate sourcing workflows, which are a lot less popular these days because they're not as flashy as the client-finding ones. But still, yet again, you can auto-score candidate CVs with job descriptions, you can personalize outreach to candidates, and do all of that stuff that you probably do already manually anyways. So now that you hopefully understand the use cases for recruiters, let's talk about how you actually use Clay. And there is nothing particularly magical about it. Every single user inside of Clay just uses one button inside of Clay 99% of the time. And that button is the enrichment button. So in the top right-hand corner, you will click on enrichment, and you will have a bunch of different enrichment options. Now, this is when most people just lose the plot, and they just end up just anxiously trying to play around with enrichments. They burn through Clay credits. But of course, if you finish watching this video, you're not going to go through the same headache that most people go through. So essentially, this is the exact step-by-step process that I want you to follow whenever you use Clay as a recruiter. And I'm going to show you step-by-step how to use it as well throughout this video. So the first step is to think of what your end goal is. Most of the time, 99% of the time, it will be some sort of template. So it will be either a final email template or final LinkedIn message template, right? After you have that template, and I'll show you in a second how to do that, you will break it down into custom variables. So what I mean by that is, for example, in this table, you have this email template that you want to send out to a bunch of people, and clearly you have those custom variables, which are first name, job title, and city. So as a next step, afterwards, you will break down the email into those variables, and you will identify the enrichment for each variable. Now, what do I mean by that? Over here, I just put it in a table so you can see the custom variable. And over here, the next step that you need to do is identify where to get it from. So AKA, what is the enrichment that you need to use? After that, you just map out whatever step it is in the process, and then you just generate a prompt. And essentially, you put the template together using this message button inside of Clay as well. So at this moment in time, you're probably thinking like, hey, show me an example. How does this actually work in practice? So that's right. I'm going to show it to you step by step right now. And essentially, we can see that the data was pushed in here. And step 1 was to tidy the job title. Step 2 was to find people that work remotely already and all of this fun stuff. And by the end of it, we basically arrive at the final email template. So all we have to do at the end is click on add column, click on message, and we can select the first name and so on, right? So we will just select the first name and all the other fun stuff. Now, essentially, what we can see if we look at any of those personalized emails, they look as personalized as you can get. But all we did here was we basically put together all of those variables that we just talked about at an earlier stage right now. So if you follow this step-by-step process, I guarantee you that you're going to simplify and shortcut your Clay learning journey. And by all means, just test it out. And those are the steps that you basically need to take. And finally, the final step is almost the final step, is to push the data to the output. And for that, the output, as I mentioned, is like Loxo, Vincere, email automation, LinkedIn automation. And you just can type in add lead to campaign, and you would see all the different options inside of Clay that you have in order to finally, sequence those leads. Now, at this moment in time, you're probably wondering, what are the biggest hurdles with Clay? Like, what kind of challenges should I anticipate? So I'm going to walk you through 3 stages. The first stage is when you're a complete beginner, you have no idea what you're doing, and you're asking yourself questions like, what's the process behind using Clay? What tools do I need apart from Clay? Because bear in mind, every single person like myself gets paid, more or less, by companies to advertise their sales tool on LinkedIn. So you get paid you basically are going to look on LinkedIn posts where people are just shouting out random sales tools because they get paid for it, and you don't actually need to use that sales tool. So 99% of the time, you'll be a waste of efforts if you just go and buy the tool that someone suggested on LinkedIn. So do not trust people on LinkedIn. That's one thing that I want you to learn from this video. Now, more than that, a lot of the time you'd be asking yourself, what are the right prompts to use inside of Clay? How do you speak to Clayagent? How do you use AI inside of Clay? How do you make 2 Clay tables talk to each other? How do you push data from one table into another table? How do you use external APIs and webhooks and scrapers? And of course, I hear you say now, oh, I'm not nerdy, I'm not technical, I have no idea what I'm doing. And guess what? Same here. I wasn't that kind of person like a year ago, but it generally doesn't take that long to actually learn Clay. And I'll lay the foundations for you in this video. And I'll also show you by the end of this video how you can actually go about getting really good at Clay in under 3 hours. So that's the first stage, right? And there are a couple of hurdles. It's pretty difficult because, in all honesty, Clay University does not do the best of jobs to explain how to use it. And yeah, right now, there are not that many great places to actually learn Clay. And I'll talk about that later down the line as well. Now, the second stage is when you start talking about how do you scale your outreach? How do you send this email not just to 5,000 people, but to 30,000 people? And how do you build super advanced workflows? For example, where you match your most placeable candidate from your ATS directly to an open role that's, just came up on a job board somewhere. And then after this, if you hopefully get to stage 3, I call this the first world problems, right? Where a lot of the time you're thinking about how the hell do I document this system so that you don't have to every single day be inside of the Clay sheets and you don't have to anxiously top up lead lists all the time yourself? And this is where I introduce you to concepts like evergreen campaigns, whereby you never need to worry about topping up leads because they get refreshed automatically every single time. So for example, as soon as a new job is listed, the job gets scraped, it gets pushed into Clay, and the workflow runs itself without your input. So essentially, those are the 3 stages when you will get stuck. And of course, it will be challenging in its own way. At this moment in time, a lot of people would say, oh, hey, this does not sound like something that I want to do. So I really want to clarify for you right now, should you do it yourself? Should you outsource it? Or should you scrap Clay altogether? You don't need Clay at all. So this is my unfiltered opinion, as you probably can guess by now. So I would do it. If I was in your position, I would recommend using Clay yourself and trying to implement it yourself, if you have over 3 hours to learn Clay and over 10 hours to become super dangerous inside of Clay, because a lot of people put off the first hour of learning Clay, and that's the hardest hour. So if you can just fast track that, and I'll tell you in a minute how you can do that, then you will become super dangerous. All it takes is 3 hours, maybe 10 hours maximum. And the third thing, which is super important if you want to do this yourself, you need to have patience for 90 days. And what I mean by that is, if you start a diet, you're not going to expect to get a six-pack within, a couple of days. Same here. I would say budget for 90 days of using Clay with no result. And by the end of the 90 days, I guarantee you that you will see results, whether that's bottom line revenue, whether it's demos booked, or anything of that sort, or hopefully candidate placements, right? So that's what I would recommend if you were to do it yourself. Now, let's talk about when you should be outsourcing Clay building. And specifically, this is if you don't have the time to worry about APIs and webhooks and Clay and all of that boring stuff, you can afford a good freelancer or a good agency that will most of the time cost you upwards of $2,500. And most of the time, you basically just want to spend delegating those tasks. But even then, for those tasks to be completed well, you need to be in the nitty-gritty of explaining your exact services so that the Clay builder can basically operate it well for you. And you need to know the exact workflows that you want to build. And by the way, if you don't have any exact workflows in mind right now that you want to build for your staffing agency, underneath the video, wherever you're watching it, I will make sure to link down below a list of the top 10 automations that I've set up for clients before. And this should give you some good inspiration for what you can actually build for your own staffing agency. Now, there is also the third category, which I want to talk about, which is don't bother with Clay at all. And that's assuming one of these three statements is correct. The first statement is you don't have $700 or more every month to spend on sales tools. Secondly, the statement is that you do not have 90 days of patience. And then thirdly, it's the fact that you don't have over 3 hours that you can commit to learning Clay. So if any of those three statements resonate, by all means, Clay is not for you. No harsh feelings. By the way, I don't work for Clay, so I don't really care, but it's just a true transparent way of me just communicating with you what I think you should be doing based on those criteria that I just talked about. Now, at this moment in time, you're probably thinking, okay, cool. You taught me a bit about Clay. Now, what do I do next? So the first step that I will recommend is to understand what plays, what kind of workflows you want automated with Clay. Because a lot of people watch all of these LinkedIn posts and YouTube videos, and they understand AI and the power of Clay and so on. And they rock up to a call with zero idea of what they want implemented for their agency. And that makes you very vulnerable, because a lot of the time people are just going to upsell you or cross-sell you, or just basically exploit you and sell you some stuff that you don't really need. So for that reason, underneath the videos I just mentioned, I'm going to give you a guide with the top 10 plays that I've implemented for staffing agencies before. You can just take some inspiration. You can probably send a link to that specific video to whoever you choose to hire, or to build out those Clay tables for you. Or alternatively, you can basically just try and build those yourself. So regardless, the first step is to understand what plays you want to pull off inside of Clay. And as soon as you understand the exact workflows and the exact automations, only then you can go to one of those two options. Now, the first option is to learn Clay and implement it yourself. So do it completely yourself, DIY, right? Essentially, you would have 4 options of how to do that. The first option is you going to Clay Bootcamp, which is probably the most famous option. It will cost you upwards of $3,000. As far as I know, it will probably take you over 90 days. As you can probably tell, I'm not really a big fan of doing that myself. Alternatively, there is also a program called Clay Operator, which basically is a program, I believe, but it's basically a Google Doc that gets shared with you with a bunch of Clay hacks, but it doesn't really teach you how to use Clay, if I'm totally honest. There is also Clay MBA, which is a course, like a generic course on how to use Clay, which I've tried before. I personally cannot say that I was the biggest fan, but once again, I don't want to diss on other people's products. And then you have Unlock Clay. And if you're not familiar with Unlock Clay, is basically the #1 best course to learn Clay for recruiters. Specifically, you can go on the website, which is unlockclay.com/recruiters. You can read a bunch of testimonials from a bunch of happy students and clients that works with me over the past couple of years and who are super happy with the progress that they've made so far. So essentially, the course is £200. It offers you a 30-day money-back guarantee. You have one-on-one direct contact with me via Slack or WhatsApp, so you can pester me with the most annoying FAQs, and I'll be answering you in the morning and in the evening every single day. And more than that, I'll teach you every individual workflow that more or less that I mentioned throughout this video today. So that's the first option if you want to learn Clay and implement it yourself. And once again, if I were you, just go to unlockclay.com/recruiters. You can basically play around, read the testimonials, see if the modules are, the things that you want to study. And if so, I'm sure you will end up buying that in your own time. So that's the first option. Now, alternatively, you can work with B2B Boosted, which is our agency, and our pricing starts at £2,000 setup fee, depending on the complexity of the workflow. In simple terms, you will basically just pay for the cost of sales tools that we use, and you will basically pay for those tools yourself. There will be no retainers with us. There will be no annoying subscriptions. The end goal is to build the system for you once, document it for your team to use, and then hand it back over to your team. Of course, if you want someone from our side to then use that system, if you don't have someone in-house that can run Clay for you, by all means we would probably charge you like a low subscription fee, but it will be nothing as high as most Clay agencies out there that will be charging you north of $3,000 a month, which is just a bit outside of my personal budget. I don't know about you. So essentially, as I already mentioned, if you want to learn Clay in under 3 hours as a recruiter, all you need to do is go to unlockclay.com/recruiters. If you want to get an agency to implement Clay for you, by all means, you have two options. You either go to clay.com/experts and you get charged a really high amount of money for the same service, or you go to b2bboosted.com and we will make sure to give you a very competitive price given the standard of quality that we aim for. Now, if you enjoyed this video, underneath it, I'm going to give away 3 cool things. The first thing is a guide to using AI and Clay for your staffing agency, which basically will give you a high-level summary of how to finally use Clay and how to finally implement AI into your agency. Secondly, I'll give you over 10 workflows that recruiters tend to love, and you can basically handpick whichever ones you want. You can then copy and paste them into your business yourself, or you can implement a company like ours to do that for you. Now, the third thing is, I haven't really decided on the third thing, to be totally honest, but most likely I'll give you some freebie in the form of, for example, teaching you how to find open roles from a company career pages using Clay. And on top of that, if you enjoyed this video, if you haven't got a Clay account just yet, I'll make sure to link down below underneath the video a link to a Clay account, which will give you 3,000, yes, you heard that correctly, 3,000 free Clay credits. Now, worth noting, this is the transformation story of a lot of staffing agencies, a lot of recruiters out there, before and after trying out Unlock Clay. So this is you before Clay, and this is you after Unlock Clay. And essentially, you can read those testimonials for yourself, as I already mentioned a couple of times, whilst trying to sell you on this one. So essentially, this is the best, aka the only course for recruiters. So if you want to check that out, by all means, just go to unlockclay.com/recruiters. In the meantime, worth noting as well that if you enjoyed this video, this was informative in any way, shape or form, or if I missed something, just come say hi. You can message me on LinkedIn. You can comment something down below. Alternatively, go check one of our websites, whether that's Unlock Clay or B2B Boosted. Now, if you enjoyed this video, by all means, go anxiously click every single video in the description down below underneath the video. And more than that, please subscribe to this channel if you enjoy content for staffing agencies. And if you comment something nice down below or give this video a like, I will make sure to release more videos that liberate and make Clay a lot more accessible to an average newbie. So if you enjoyed that, go subscribe to the channel, go grab every single guide, click on every single link in the description, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.